The Witch and the Definitely Dead Detective by Sadie Brent, Chapter 16, A Festival of Beginnings. The morning started earlier than Evie would have liked. Annie had been called back to work and had to rush to the airport. Despite Annie's grumbles about leaving so soon, Evie assured her it was fine and insisted she visit again soon, for longer this time. Once Annie left, Evie busied herself with the last-minute preparations for the grand reopening. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, nervous energy filled the shop, and Evie flitted from display to display, double-checking that everything was just right. "Are you ready?" James asked, leaning casually against the counter with an amused grin as he watched her pace. Yes? No? Maybe?" Evie's eyes darted to the clock, then to the door. James chuckled, his slightly translucent form shimmering faintly in the morning light. "Relax. The grand reopening is going to be a hit. The town loves a good festival, and Lizzie's shop was always a favorite. People will come, if only out of curiosity, to meet you, the great niece of Lizzie." Evie froze mid-step, spinning to face him with wide eyes. "That didn't help. Did I ever mention that I'm not exactly a people person? I'm much more of a hide-behind-the-scenes kind of gal." James laughed, the sound warm and light. He walked over and gently placed his hands on her shoulders. She couldn't feel him physically, but the gesture was oddly comforting. "You'll be fine. Just take a deep breath. The shop looks amazing. The games are set up and the prizes are ready. You've got everything under control." Evie nodded, inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly. "Okay, you're right. I've got this." A knock at the back door startled her, and she jumped. James stifled a laugh as she gave him a mock glare and hurried down the hall to open the door. "Didn't think we'd leave you to tackle this all alone, did you?" Frida beamed as she stepped inside, followed by Marcellus, who held 2 steaming cups of coffee. "We brought reinforcements," Marcellus said, holding up the coffee cups. "And pastries." Frida wiggled a paper bag with a triumphant grin. Evie laughed, waving them in. "You two are lifesavers. Come on in." By mid-morning, the streets of Stony Fork were alive with activity. Strings of bunting fluttered in the crisp autumn breeze, and the cheerful sounds of children's laughter blended with the hum of conversation and upbeat music from a local band playing near the town square. Vendors lined the sidewalks with tables of handcrafted goods, baked treats, and steaming cups of apple cider. The scent of cinnamon and roasting chestnuts filled the air, mingling with the crisp tang of fallen leaves. Inside the shop, Evie bounced between greeting customers, explaining the apple fishing game, and answering questions about the shop's wares. The crowd was a mix of locals, many of whom she recognized from Red's Diner, and out-of-towners drawn by the festival's charm. A soft chime from the door signaled a new visitor, and Evie turned to greet him. The man was older, with graying brown hair and an air of quiet confidence. He smiled warmly as he approached her. "Hello there, I'm Hugo Bates, owner of the bookstore across the way." Evie shook his hand, forcing a pleasant smile. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Bates. I've seen your shop. It's charming." "Call me Hugo, please. And thank you. Your shop looks lovely as well. We should have lunch sometime. I'd love to talk business and properly welcome you to town." Her smile didn't falter, but inwardly, Evie's mind flashed to the note she'd found in the shop, the one where Hugo had pushed Lizzie to sell her property. His tone had been clipped and impatient, though not outright hostile. She wondered how many times he'd tried to buy the shop and how Lizzie had handled it. Pushing the thought aside, she nodded. "I'd like that. Thanks." Hugo tipped an imaginary hat and wandered off just as Al from the salon next door popped in to stock up on her favorite soap. "You're a lifesaver, Evie," Al said, laughing as she left with her order. By the time the festival wound down, Evie was exhausted but exhilarated. The day had been a whirlwind of smiles, introductions, and sales. She leaned against the counter, sipping the last dregs of her coffee, while Frida and Marcellus tallied up the numbers. "And the total is," Marcellus tapped his fingers on the counter like a drum roll, $2,372. That's in-store purchases, with just over $500 in orders to be picked up later. Evie's jaw dropped. "That's amazing," Marcellus smiled. "Lizzie would have been proud. That's a fantastic day for the shop." Frida beamed and patted Evie's shoulder. "You're going to do just fine, Han. This shop is in excellent hands." Evie swallowed the lump in her throat, her chest tightening with emotion. Thank you both. I really couldn't have done this without you. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the town, Evie locked the front door and let out a long, contented sigh. The streets were quiet now, save for the occasional car rolling past. You did good, kid, James said, appearing beside her with a proud smile. Evie chuckled, leaning against the counter. Thanks, James. I couldn't have done it without you either. I'll take that as my cue to disappear, James said, tipping an imaginary hat. Get some rest. Tomorrow's another day. Evie nodded, watching as he faded from view. Upstairs in the apartment, she sank onto the cozy, overstuffed couch and looked around. The soft glow of the table lamp bathed the room in a warm light, highlighting the eclectic decor that still carried Lizzie's touch. Her gaze drifted to a framed photograph on the wall, Lizzie standing proudly by her greenhouse, a big smile on her face and a basket of fresh herbs in her hands. Evie's heart ached with a mix of sadness and longing. She wished she'd had the chance to know Lizzie, to learn from her. I hope I'm making you proud, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Spinks jumped up onto her lap, purring loudly. She scratched behind his ears, finding comfort in his presence. The day had been long, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her. As much as she loved the house by the river, the thought of making the trek back tonight felt daunting. This place is growing on me, she murmured, glancing around the apartment. Maybe we'll just stay here tonight. With Spinks curled up beside her, Evie closed her eyes, letting the events of the day replay in her mind. The warmth of the townsfolk, the success of the festival, and the lingering curiosity about the mysteries Lizzie had left behind. As sleep overtook her, a sense of belonging settled in her chest. For the first time in a long time, Evie felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be.